girl, like take the wheel. You know what I mean? So your discovery with this and your application of this is your own creative spiritual revelation, and you don't need me to approve of it, or to like you don't need any imprimatur from some so-called master. Okay, welcome, star children, sex symbols et al, or as Lena Dunham says, et al. We are doing a special edition today in celebration of Valentine's Day. We here at the Heavenly Bodies Studio Offices Corporation wanted to do a breakdown about Mars, Venus, and the sort of meeting of the lovers. So I want to slow down the frequency, and this will be less of like a deep dive than previous episodes, and it's going to be a little bit more about these concepts as they are alive within you now. And what I want to say with the disclaimer, there's a few things. First of all, I'm going to be talking about these archetypes. Let me begin by saying this about astrology. All of the signs and all of the planets are within you. You are not, just because you were born a Cancer sun, okay, you're a Cancer, but all of the planets are moving through the solar system, which means that in the microcosmic orbit of your lived reality, they're all moving through you. All of the signs, the wheel of the zodiac is you. That is your wheel of consciousness. That is your hero's journey. So what I want to, we're talking about Mars and Venus, which I'm going to explain. This deals a lot with masculine, feminine, and these sort of two sides of the sexual sort of dance. All of this is within you and within another, sure, because we do want to talk about this being a love and sex application, but I don't want anything to get overly literalized. I think I've expressed this before on the podcast, but I get frustrated when people are like, okay, well, I'm a Leo and I started dating a Capricorn. Are we compatible? And it's like, let's go. You're being so reductive, The planets, there are 10 planets in the solar system. 7 of those planets have corresponding days of the week, which is to say Mars rules Tuesday, Venus rules Friday. Hello. They have correspondences in the tarot, in the Zohar, in Kabbalah, in the 10 spheres of the Kabbalah. They have correspondences in the chakras. They have correspondences everywhere. They incarnate or take form in your favorite pieces of art or divas or movies or characters or whatever. So these are sort of dynamic concepts. They're not, when we're talking about they're based on gods. Those gods have many faces. Those gods come from many traditions. So this is supposed to be like a delicious soup. And I'm just trying to, when you want to like play with these sort of things, you want to really be in a framework where you're not going to get in trouble for like getting the assignment wrong. I think this is a thing that happens a lot. Often when I've taught courses, and I understand this, when you're starting out with playing with these sort of things, there is this thing of, am I doing it right? I should leave it to the masters. In this case, it's kind of like, girl, like take the wheel. You know what I mean? So your discovery with this and your application of this is your own creative spiritual revelation. And you don't need me to approve of it, or to like, you don't need any imprimatur from some so-called master. And I think like there's a million ways to do this. So, all right. Because it's Valentine's, I'm holding in my hand the tarot card of the Lovers from the Aquarian deck. The Lovers is card number 6 in the tarot in the major arcana, and it shows two, masculine and feminine presences coming together. And that's what we're talking about. When I'm giving a tarot reading and I'm talking about these two sides of us, often I am talking about you and another, and I'm often talking about the reconciliation of inner forces. So let's talk about what those inner forces or external forces are. The divine feminine and the divine masculine. Divine feminine will be embodied by Venus. Divine masculine will be embodied by Mars. Venus and Mars spends about 2 months in every sign. Venus spends about a month in every sign. Venus is the planet of love, beauty, artistry, visibility, fertility, creativity. Mars is drive, fire, ego, self, ambition. Mars is very much about embodiment. Venus is also about embodiment, but I think from different sides of the coin. Venus is, and again, take this language, just try not to, I'm not applying this language to you or your body, but Venus is about the body as a conduit, or let's say a vessel, for all sorts of currents and forces, spiritual, creative, sexual, the ability to create life, to create music, to cook, to write a book, to have these forces move through you. Mars is about the body as the sort of generator and not the conduit. Mars is saying, I am the atomic fuel. I want to surge. I want to put these things into the world. I want to create. I want to destroy. Let me just say, these are obviously go in gendered directions, but they are not really restricted to any biological destiny. They don't, to me, they have a big sexual application. And of course, there's so much fun to be had with them in playing with how you present your gender. But there is no prescription with your Mars or your Venus. There is no saying, well, the astrology is saying I was born this way, therefore. No. You have both of these forces within you, and depending on what sign they're in, we learn a lot about how they operate and maybe what challenges they face or where they really like to bloom. But it's not to say that you're more one or more the other, or you're prescribed to more masculinity or more femininity. It's just about these things are within you and we want to bring them to reconciliation. Why do we want to bring them? Okay, well, first of all, let me keep explaining what they are. Venus really deals a lot. Venus rules Taurus, the sign of fertility, and Libra, the sign of harmony. And Venus deals a lot with how we want to be received, how we want to be received publicly in our career arena, through what we create, and of course, in bed, how we want to be received, how we want to be worshipped. Venus, we really are thinking about the goddess, and the goddess is worshipped. The goddess, or even her high priestess, is the divine brought into the incarnate form. You know, when we think about Venus emerging out of the sea foam in Cyprus, we are thinking about the dawn of beauty and the dawn of really incarnation of, okay, we can go to a Buddhist retreat and just like meditate, yes. But if we want to bring all of this into something we can like adore, that's Venus. The divine feminine is, to me, the reason I love a lot of my super women, if you think about like the Phoenix in X-Men or Storm in X-Men, the divine feminine is the conduit of this unbelievable power. It is as Charlotte Rampling would say in Dune, the ultimate power. So it's not to say that this is all just like a delicate little rose. It's more about we are trying to make contact with these elemental forces through the currents of music or beauty or taste, or and by worshiping that divine feminine form, she can unleash this sort of power. Okay, stay with me. In Kabbalah and the Zohar, the Shekhinah, the divine feminine, my Zohar teacher was just like, she is always present. She doesn't leave. She doesn't abandon. She's in everything. But she was talking a lot about how the divine feminine, is so associated with the moon. The moon is going in these constant cycles of life and death, birth, rebirth, the earth, the water, the sea, the rivers. It's these currents and these forces of constant movement and change. Okay, we love her. Venus has a link with Neptune. Neptune deals with the collective consciousness and like the collective imagination. And Venus really wants to, through your body, through your inner feminine, she wants to release those powers interpersonally, as a force of love, as a force of creativity, as a force of consciousness. So the idea that presence should be worshipped is amazing, because again, if you think about the body as the temple or whatever, the altar, the home, these domains which are polished and cleaned and given that sort of devotion, Venus loves that, because Venus is saying, like, as Camille Paglia was saying about the ancient Egyptians, beauty is power and power is beauty. It's like, if the vessel is honored and adored, imagine what can emerge through it, okay? I swear there's more. Mars is the god of war. Mars rules Aries and Scorpio. Aries, which is the first sign of the zodiac, which deals a lot with initiation, creation, launching new things forward, fire, fire, fire. Scorpio, which is the 8th sign of the zodiac, which deals with death, rebirth, the underworld in which the atomic vaults are stored. So Mars has this sort of creator, destroyer. If you think about Aries, we're obviously thinking about the springtime, and we're thinking about fertilization. Like I said, Venus rules Taurus, which is the sign of fertility. Mars rules Aries, which is the fertilizer. It is the force which is needing to break down that wall to create something new. As the war god, Mars serves this purpose of kind of clearing away that which was, breaking, if we think about the dawn of the spring, the shattering of the frost, the shattering of the ice as the volcanic heat comes to initiate. And of course, initiation has this sort of violence to it. Again, and I'm not trying to romanticize that. And again, I'm really not wanting to take this into overly gendered places, because your Mars, by the way, I have Mars in Pisces, which is so weird and so not that. I'm just giving you the basics of what Mars is, and then we'll get more into like how this applies. Mars is wherever Mars is in your zodiac, in your chart. Mars is trying to say there is an active presence here, which is the lighter of those fires in the temple. If Venus is the goddess in the temple, Mars is Dionysus, or if you read Mists of Avalon, it's all about like the witches of Avalon, who then at Beltane, they need a young man to put on the goat's head and do the work of being the incubus to the divine goddess on the altar. Mars is the force of, we must create, we must launch, we must imbue, we must I think Mars is really important for queer people to connect with because many of us have really tricky relationships with power or with being we're afraid of being the dominator. We're afraid of being like maybe our father or whoever that was in our lives. Mars is saying yes, and yes, it's really beautiful in spirituality to have an ego death, and that's lovely. But in terms of driving forward your power or your presence or what you have to launch into the world or what you have to say or what you have to do, there has to be some ego. There has to be some presence. There has to be someone there. The divine feminine is this huge power that is so connected to earth and water and elements and soul and spirit. The divine masculine is the iron strength, the champion who can hold that power and kind of protect it, preserve it, and launch and be there for it. Again, I am not gendering this as man and woman. I'm saying we can all kind of be in all of these. But the divine masculine is really important. And I think like the tragedy of the downfall of masculinity and the fact that like men and young men who are conditioned into traditional masculinity, who are basically like not really good for much besides playing video games, there is that thing of like, you should be a knight. You're supposed to be a champion. And a champion is able for the powerhouses, often the powerhouse women or the powerhouse femmes in their life, the champion should be there to hold, strengthen, and provide the divine firmament, to be iron, to be balance. That's what the divine masculine is supposed to be. Trippy, right? So Mars and Venus are constantly on the move. As we speak, they should be in Aquarius, which is pretty trippy. They're in different places from when you were born. A lot of what we are thinking about with Valentine's Day, like I said, is the celebration of these two aspects, the unity of these two aspects within, and the unity of these two aspects in our relationships and in our sex lives. So let me go through that. When we look at the Lovers, which I hold in my hand, the Lovers has a correspondence with the Devil. The Devil is the dark form of the Lovers. In the Lovers card, we saw an angel uniting the masculine and feminine within us. In the Devil card, we see a demonic presence who has enshackled the masculine and feminine within us. The work, I think, of a lot of our sensual, spiritual, I mean, I can at least speak for Kabbalah. Kabbalah is so much about the masculine and the feminine must be facing each other and they must be embracing. So much of the Zohar, as I'm learning right now, is about what is the chaos that ensues when the divine masculine and the divine feminine aren't in a locked embrace, when one is facing outward, when one is facing away. So a big thing with the Devil is, how has our sexuality or our self-expression or our creativity or our ability to love or our ability to receive love been shackled? What is that dark side? What is that dark entity that has done that? How does that live within us? I think the Devil is I think the Devil's an amazing card for understanding our sexuality, because I think sex offers a way to encounter the shadow or the demonic force within that has maybe enchained some aspect of us. And it allows us to kind of basically have sex with that devil and understand maybe if I play you out in obviously a safe, healthy, boundaried way, whatever that means for you, maybe if I can encounter this force and play with this force, I can give voice or give new freedom to my inner masculine and my inner feminine. So I do kind of like, I think the devil's amazing. And I do think like sex is a trip into the underworld. Sex is a trip into the thing that we're presenting. And, you know, I don't agree with Samantha Jones. Who you are in bed is not necessarily who you are in life, because so much of who we are in life is this conditioned or corrupted version of what we think people want our masculine and feminine to be, when in reality they may be held, either held in the shadow world for their own protection, or they're being held captive because they were conditioned. So sex is about the awakening of, or sex can be about the encounter and awakening with those forces. And again, like I think the big advice here for a Valentine's Day episode, but already in terms of the sex you're having with yourself and with others, but I do think with others this is major, because it often requires, if we're talking about your inner Venus being awakened, she needs someone to work. She does want to be worshipped. What incarnation she wants to take, fine, that's up for debate. But the idea of being worshipped and being like someone who is just like the servant who's cleaning and maintaining the temple, that's important. Mars is wanting, I'm trying to put this in the right way. Mars is wanting to embody the full muscularity and atomic potential within. And Mars wants to fertilize. Mars wants to be unleashed. And that also requires someone who can then be on the other side of it and say, and receive that. Someone who really wants to, we are really running to the end of euphemistic possibilities here, but you get what I'm saying. These roles, which allow these two sides of us to come out in all sorts of different ways. And by the way, those can even be flipped within themselves. Like, I think if we're thinking in the top-bottom binary, bottoming can also, the power dynamics that are assumed with those, I think often get very flipped. It's so interesting because like in the world I grew up in, and in like the sort of banal sort of cheesy porn that I grew up with, it was very much like, oh, the top is this very like muscular, masculine man, and the bottom is this like smaller, fey little, twink. And in reality, like, that's not really how I'm seeing things getting applied now, where it's like, oh, I see people who get very muscular and very big, who are turning their bodies into these like masterpieces, who therefore want someone to come in and kind of like, I don't want to say desecrate the temple, but you get what I'm saying. So it's interesting to see how those get danced around with, but I'm playing around with all of these associations because I do think there's something to be said, and this can be anonymous sex, this can be sex with your lover, with your chosen one, but the other can really go to these places with you, and the other can help uncover the lost temple, or the other can help to yield the buried atomic weapons, to yield that desire, that fire, that drive that has been maybe masked under depression or other layers of dissociative kind of fugue dreariness, whatever. That said, it's interesting. First of all, this is the Two of Cups I hold in my hand. The Two of Cups shows two lovers clinking glasses together and making a contract. The Two of Cups is known as the Lord of Love. Two is such a card of balance. And the Lord of Love, Venus in Cancer, is so much about the unity and the balance. And I think like in my own journeys with uncovering, discovering my authentic sexuality and like the still very present struggle I have with letting my Mars take an authoritative form that it wants to take, which I'm afraid to take, and letting my Venus receive love, be fed, be nourished, be worshipped. It's about the contract. And I don't mean to say that everything needs to be like perfectly agreed and stated between lovers, but it is meant to be about a harmony. Venus and Mars, when Mars rules Scorpio and when Venus rules Libra, Scorpio is trying to destroy those extraneous expressions and those things that have gone too far. And then Scorpio follows Libra. Libra is bringing things into balance. Libra is bringing the two into a marriage. And then Scorpio is saying, now let's do the melding and the molting and bringing these two into one. So, I think that's also with one's other, but also within oneself, that sort of contract and that sort of, we're going to clink glasses and look in each other's eyes before we dive into this, isn't just a like, oh, do you feel safe? Whatever. It's also about like, okay, what's the giving? What's the receiving? Who's getting, what's emerging? What do we want to destroy? What do we want to uncover? I want to say that the Lovers is ruled by Gemini, the sign of duality. Gemini's opposite and complementary sign is Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is Temperance. Temperance is that angel. The angel we saw in the Lover's card, the devil we saw in the devil. We are finally face to face with the angel itself. The angel of Temperance is an agendered higher presence. Temperance card always speaks to like the higher power you talk about in recovery. That is our higher self, our higher composite presence. So I wanted to really point that out, that the duality, the opposite of this duality is the integrated self, the integrated union. Isn't that amazing? So again, I think for those of us who have gone through all sorts of different gender presentations, or who are in a kind of constant metamorphic state, or who aren't, like if you're going to be taking on the role of the high priest or high priestess, these are aspects of you, but you are connecting to something bigger than that. And I wanted to, again, point out Temperance as the highest form, because once these two forces are brought to unity, we can kind of be dancing with all of them from the top. Our work, I think, is to access the Mars, access the Venus, and then by bringing them together, we are the kind of higher self. I know that sounds pretty fucking trippy, but why that's useful is this. A lot of times when people are asking about love during readings, we will pull up a king or a queen card. Here in my hands, I have the King of Cups. Sometimes you'll get the Queen of Wands, but usually it's about the kings that are coming up. And it's always tricky for me. It's not tricky, but there's always an ambiguity that has to be uncovered, because when you pull up a king I'm looking to meet love, I'm looking to meet someone, do I, as your astrologer, as your tarot reader, see for you, this is the king you're going to meet, this is the king you're attracted to? Or am I saying this is the king within you who needs to be fully activated for you to meet that person? So again, we're having this inner-outer duality, this inner-outer dance. The king, the Mars, the masculine, the highest masculine, the one who is there to support, sustain, act as the servant of the firmament, if that force is not made contact with within you, it is likely that you will be seeking it out in another, but they will be having to overcompensate for something that is lacking, which is usually not the best thing in a relationship. That's not to say, I hate this bullshit that people say to me. Can I just say, as someone who's been like mostly single, I hate when people say like, oh, you need to be good with yourself before you can meet someone. All of that shit. Okay. I don't want to do that to you. I'm not here to do that. What I am saying is on a specific level, what your Mars placement, and I think if you may be pulling the same king cards, whatever challenges your Mars placement is, if there's any planets opposing or squaring your Mars, whatever sign your Mars is in, whatever this thing is, we're trying to understand in your own divine masculinity, is there something that was not given to you, that was not properly conditioned for or against? Do you feel lacking in your ability to provide for yourself? Do you feel lacking in some sense of confidence that then gets projected onto someone else as the real, oh, he has it. I'm attracted to him. I want what he has. That's when we're in trouble. The idea of you have tapped into this force on your own and you are wanting someone to complement or strengthen or sustain it, or you have this in your divine masculine, you're looking for the divine feminine in him, and you can do this dance together, that's hot. Okay, that's very hot. I think it's worth it, though, to understand, like, okay, it's not to say that you have to resolve all of these insecurities in this lifetime before you meet someone, because it's bullshit that other people don't and they just get to constantly be in relationships. But it's worth seeing what are the kind of missing pieces that we've been looking to fill. And then what would it be if it were more of a dance of complementary forces? I say this because I've done a lot of tarot readings. I've also just had a lot of experiences where my power or the other person is getting the card that is saying you are attracted to your own power that you don't have access to, and you are chasing it in this person who might actually not even be as powerful as you. Lulu Krause, friend of the show, once asked me, like, have you ever fucked your power? And it's like in Fleabag when she goes to the therapist and she's like, have you ever fucked God? And Fleabag is like, can you do that? And she's like, oh, yes. But Fleabag's pretty good because, again, Fleabag with the priest, the idea of she's attracted to the hot priest because she's seeking something in her is wanting this authority figure to enforce something on her, to break the chaos. Okay, good to know. For you, these are your assignments. First of all, I think everyone has the Mars and the Venus that is natural to them. So I recommend that you look at your chart or get a reading with an acclaimed astrologer. Look at your chart and see where your Mars and Venus are. There are other Mask Fem planets in your chart. For more feminine information, look at your moon. Look at your moon and Mars. Look at your moon and your Venus. For more mask, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. The others are all pretty queer. Like Mercury, Uranus, they're flipping gender all the time. They're so andro. Okay. That's a good place to start. That's a good place to start of saying, where are these things going on in my chart? Where do these things get expressed? What incarnation do they want to take? Look at where Mars and Venus are. Where's Aquarius in your chart? How are they wanting to show up? I would also think about, your chart is broken up into 4 angles. Your chart is broken up into the ascendant, the kind of self, the IC, home, roots, and family, the DC, relationships, and the MC, careers. How do these, when those planets are inevitably crossing those 4 places, your career arena, your home arena, your relationship arena, and the kind of arena of the self, how are they wanting to emerge? Then we go to the next level. What are the incarnations of these that you have loved and that are showing up around you now? Who was that in your family? What is that album that brings out the divine feminine or the divine masculine for you? What is that comic book character, movie character, whatever? Then we go to the next level. If you want to do an altar to Venus, Venus's day is a Friday. There is an Orphic hymn. The Orphic hymns are hymns to ancient hymns to pre-Greece, to the gods and planets. So if you want to Venus, think about Venus as Friday. Venus rules every Friday. Friday is the day when the weekend's here. We're going to buy flowers. For Jews, you're going to light the candles, have everyone over for dinner. We want to clean the house, make the house our divine entity, our divine temple. We're getting ready for the weekend. We want to get dressed up and go out and party, maybe meet a lover. Mars's day is Tuesday. The way I would think about that is like we are charging, like we are fucking charging through the week. Mars, okay. What are the things we do for our body during the week? What is the workout? What are we doing at work? What is the sort of effort that is being made to bring us to the point of that sort of rapturous exclamation and worship and exaltation of the weekend? Those are some applications. These want to emerge in your style. They want to emerge in your cooking. Like, they want to emerge everywhere. They want, like, you as the divine masculine, as the sort of bearer and champion and knight, you as the divine feminine, as the source and the beauty and the power, you as the sort of active, driving, horny conqueror, you as the sort of godly presence with whom they should be so lucky to even get to kiss your feet. Okay? They're wanting to emerge. So this is not like a 1 day or a 1 week exercise. This is an ongoing metamorphic exploration. So there's that. For Valentine's Day specifically, I think that either for you and your beloved, or for you if this is a one night at the Eagle affair, or for you just lighting some candles and getting to know your body, I think it would be really interesting to play with the opposites and to play with the duality. This is the role that the world cast me in. The world wanted me to play passive feminine. Now I am playing savage, overpowering, tempestuous, hurricane feminine. The world has wanted me to play stern, grunt, unemotional masculine. Now I am playing chaotic, manic, volcanic, apocalyptic, rapturous, Dionysian male. Whatever these are. What is that opposite you are playing, and what is the opposite your lover that can then be playing? And how can those be in a complement to each other? What is getting uncovered? By the way, I think the point of sex there's only so many intentions you can set before going into the bedroom or going into the dark room. So a lot of this is about the discovery that it takes place after. But I think a huge part of this is saying, I've known myself to be this person. I'm about to go into this dark room or go into this encounter. and I welcome the opportunity to see who's been in the underworld and who wants to emerge. And once they've emerged, fuck yeah, I want to be in dialogue with them. I want to channel them. I want them to emerge in my style. I want them to take shape. So I think there's a sense of setting intentions, and also there's the before, the during, and the after, and each of those is its own discovery process. So if you don't know what shape your Mars or your Venus is wanting to take in your life, let them emerge for you. Let them speak to you when you're in these when you're on the dance floor, when you're in the bedroom, when you're having these transformational experiences. But I think the point is opening oneself up to them. If this has been quite a ride for you and your Valentine's Day was cuckoo and you have things to tell me, hit us up, ask at heavenlybodiespodcast.com. You can always book a reading with me, davidodyssey.com. We are here every Wednesday, and we will be back next Wednesday with more insight, guidance, and godliness. So please come back, subscribe, leave a glowing encomium wherever you get your podcasts, because those reviews do really help. And also, send these to chic hot people. I really want... Who are the chic hot people in your life? I want them to be in this audience and worshiping at the temple with me. This has been David Odyssey. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the other side. This podcast is part of Pride House Media, hosted by David Odyssey, and produced by Matthew Breen and Josh Rosenzweig, with original music composed by Nell Balaban. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a rating and review. It really helps others discover the show. I'd love to get to know you, so email questions and visions to ask@heavenlybodiespodcast.com and book a reading with me at davidodyssey.com. Until our next trip, keep looking up.